So there are so many reasons why we're thrilled to host these two poets here tonight. Both are obviously distinguished poets. Both are also distinguished educators. Both have ties to Brooklyn, both of whom continue to draw up the blueprints for addressing some of the most pressing matters of our time in their poetry: matters of history, matters of memory, ancestry, family, self and society, freedom and incarceration, privilege and privation, among many of the other potent and pressing themes in their work. And this evening we have for sale copies of Pardlo's Spectral Evidence and Metres's Fugitive Refuge, his most recent collection of poetry, as well as most recent collection of talks and essays, Dispatches from the Land of Erasure, just out from University of Michigan Press. And our speakers will be signing copies after the program, so please do purchase a copy. As many of you know now, after having come to this series for couple months, couple years. The Poetry Society was founded in New York over a century ago, and its purpose is to uplift and celebrate the place of poetry in public life. If you're interested in helping the organization achieve that goal, promoting poetry in public life and discourse, I encourage you to become a member. Members come to readings like this for free. They can get free access to our live streams. They can submit to our contests for free. And it's a good way to support many of our public programs like Poetry in Motion, Poems on Wheels, sending poems to homebound seniors. So if you're interested in that kind of work of the intersection of poetry and public life, we'd love for you to become a supporting member. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Philip Metres. Philip Metres is the author of 13 books, including, most recently, Dispatches from the Land of Erasure and Fugitive Refuge, winner of the William Carlos Williams Award. His work moves across borders in multiple senses, bridging poetry, essay, and lyric nonfiction, while reframing questions of belonging and citizenship, self and nation. Metres's fleet-footed writing employs textual appropriation, narrative sleights of hand, poetic aporia, aphorism, and rhyme to undermine the thinking that turns neighbors into others. In Fugitive Refuge, the mood is elegiac and the stakes are high, but the poet's unflinching look at our global paradigm, security and statehood for the relative few, belies his reverence for migration, figured both as a world historical fact and also a state of grace. In the poem Homeland, he begins, "If there were one, more would come." Fugitive Refuge is a song of transience sung in many modes and scales. It addresses the poet's family history, a photo of an uncle boxing on a rooftop in Brooklyn Heights, for example, a grandfather glued to a Mets game, and a doting father. These personal reflections are situated in the book's larger socio-political narrative, told, for example, in a dramatic epistle to the Sudanese poet Abdel Wahab Youssef, and I hope I'm pronouncing that name okay, who died crossing the Mediterranean, and in a series of concrete poems entitled This Sea, Wrought and Tempestuous, which evokes seething waves and shipwrecks. Metres's haunted poetry evokes, as in this last line from his poem Song for Refugees, which borrows its prosody from Frost, miles of ghosts beneath our sleep. His work has received support from major institutions, including the Guggenheim Foundation and the National Endowment for the Arts, and he is English professor and a professor of English and director of the Peace, Justice, and Human Rights program at John Carroll University. He lives with his family in Cleveland. Please welcome our first reader, Philip Metres.
All right. Let me just set my timer here. Oh, that's not it. Sorry. I'm very grateful to be with you tonight. Can you hear me okay? It's so good to see all of you. This is really special for me to be back here because just a few blocks away, my dad grew up with his sister and family on 290 Hick Street, which is I think in some ways a place of Arab American literary historical consequence, because it was there that Khalil Gibran once had dinner with our family and wrote a letter about that experience. And our lore is that he must have been inspired to write The Prophet there. I cannot confirm or deny that fact, but let's just put it out there. We should have a plaque on 290 Hick Street. And then some years later, Peter Blatty's mother would come for meals. And he is, of course, the author of The Exorcist. So, and then some years later, I, a scribbler of no renown, just saw my grandparents and that family and wanted to honor their stories, the lives of ordinary immigrants, really. And every ordinary immigrant story is an extraordinary one. And ours is just like all the others in that way. So I'm grateful to be here. I stopped by at Sahadi's and I brought you some baklava, some pastry. Because one of the things I learned from my grandparents is that hospitality is love. And care for the stranger is at the heart of that love. So everyone is possibly family. Which leads me to my first poem, which is sort of inspired by the lovely Arabic phrase ahlan wa sahlan, which means poetically in the longer version of this, your family, and this place is smooth for you. So if you come, basically people say that means welcome, but it really means is you're one of us and you can rest here. So it's a beautiful phrase. This poem was written and inspired by the wonderful poet Marwa Halal, an Egyptian-American poet, who invented the Arabic form, which is a poem to be read from right to left. So okay, abnormal heart rate detected. See? You're already working on me, people. Already working on me. So if I keel over, you know why. Settle down, watch. It's okay. So I will read the poem first from left to right and then from right to left, just to give you that sense of the sort of the swing of the poem. So it is called, "You have come upon people who are like family in this open space. No cannot I cannot know. End will this how this will end. Both are we though we are both. Air different in breathing in different air. Flesh different of planets of different flesh. Stop won't I won't stop. Hand my holding my hand. You toward you. Sahlan wa ahlan wa sahlan. People upon come have you. You have come upon people. Family like are who are like family. Space open this open space. Space this open this space. You welcome I that I welcome you. Away turn to turn away. Stay to wish you unless you wish to stay. Shoes you remove and rest and remove your shoes. Speak your into lean we lean into your speak. Slake to drink tender drink to slake. Eat to fullness and fullness to eat. End thee are you are the end of my beginning of beginning thee beginning of, and my end. So that's having a little conversation with one of my cousins today, and the conversation surrounded the fact of family squabbles. Anybody in this room have family members not talking to each other? So we must all be related then. This feature of family life is I think kind of both ordinary again and also tragic, you know. And the story I would like to share is one that my father told me. It's so funny looking at my aunt here. The family resemblance is so wild. If I look at you from the corner of my eyes, I see my father. It's a beautiful thing. Genetics is wild, isn't it, people? So many years ago, my grandfather and his family sadly witnessed the murder of my great-grandfather in Mexico. And this was not something that was talked about. But I wondered what shadow it cast, what cloud it cast over the family. And I learned through the story of my father that his brother, that my grandfather and his brother did not talk for many, many years. And the reasons seem to be various, but I wondered what happened to them in that traumatic moment when, you know, every time they're together, they're reminded perhaps of that moment that they could not stop, the killing of their own father. There's a wonderful photograph, family photo. This is a little bit of a family album. It's my grandfather and his brother boxing on a roof in New York, probably just down the street. They loved to box together, and then they boxed emotionally after that, and then they didn't come out of the corners. So this is the moment where my father meets his uncle for the first time. This is called From Thy Face Shall I Be Hid, Brooklyn Heights, 1948. Like a man fighting against his mirror, two brothers circled, fists aloft, no words. I couldn't tell my uncle from my father. Years before, how did they watch their father confront the gang alone? In his own blood, like a man crashing against his mirror and falling in. No forgiving the other what each himself had failed to stop. Why could I not tell I'd seen my uncle to my father? At Sahadi's, I thought he was my father, ahead in line. I'm Uncle Sam, he said. Like a man feuding against his mirror, he bought me 3 meat pies. My father gave me prunes and the belt. Uncle patted my head. No one knew why Uncle and my father refused to speak for years. Now I hold the picture. Homing in, no space between their leaning heads, they aim for the heart. A man brawls his mirror. I can't tell my father from my father. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. This poem for my daughter. For Layla means night, and night is beautiful to the desert mind. So Greg lives in the desert out there, and you know, Layla in Arabic means night, but it also has a name meaning sort of dark beauty. And I always sort of was puzzling over that until I just thought of like what it's like, you know, in the desert, in the heat of places like that. And of course, the night is a time where you can actually, you know, do beautiful things to celebrate and get together and be with family. So night is beautiful to the desert mind. For Layla means night, and night is beautiful to the desert mind. But the ends of the earth writhe in crazy fire. So I narrow my eyes to count each strand upon your sweet and tender head, replenished by their number. Midway in this thicket, a father now, my own skull bared by time's flames. Today I learned for the first time the inside of a girl's hair, to brush the hair beneath the hair. The generous scalp might give them up to brush. The brush might give them up to trash. But I will hoard their beautiful night. So that's for my girl, who was probably, I don't know, 6 at the time. Now she's like 19, and she has pink hair. And yeah, following in your footsteps, Jesse. Okay. Abnormal heart rate detected. Thank you, phone. Okay. So one of the things that this book was trying to do, and Parker did such a lovely introduction, was try to weave a personal, individual story of a family journey from Lebanon through Mexico to New York, alongside the wider global, you know, catastrophe of global human migration, which has been occurring in the last 15 to 20 years. I think I remember very, very vividly seeing, you know, all of these news stories of boats drowning in the Mediterranean, and it just filled me with fury and helplessness and sadness. And of course it's sad on its own, but then I recognized, of course, that our family were also refugees and exiles, and that precarity, that absolute vulnerability that people face in so many places was something that wasn't just out there, but it was very much part of my own family story, which I suddenly recognized. And at the same time, you know, that's probably the story of a lot of the folks in this room. And yet somehow there's something about the American amnesia, this land of erasure, that invites us to forget, constantly inviting us to forget. So I suppose that's part of the work of the poems, but also this book. Maybe I'll read a very, very short bit from Dispatches from the Land of Erasure. Speaking of erasure, my previous book was entirely consumed with thinking about and trying to understand the Palestine and Israel dilemma, and that book came out in 2020. Needless to say, one of the things that I experienced after writing it was that there were times that I wondered if I spoke too temperately about what has been an ongoingly catastrophic situation for Palestinians. I think sometimes my longing for peace sometimes quieted my tongue in ways that maybe I shouldn't have. I wanted to write a poem that was a remorse for temperate speech for a friend of mine who I met online, Mossab Abu Toha. Some of you may know he's a poet from Gaza. So I wrote this poem in 2020, and sadly, prophetically, the contents of this poem came true when in November of 2023 his house was bombed. He is still alive, but he lost, his house and the library that he made, the Edward Said Memorial Library. So this is a poem for, I think, my failures to speak clearly and also to listen better to Palestinians, which I think is ongoingly an issue for us. I've used ongoingly twice. I didn't even know that was a word before tonight. Remorse for temperate speech. For I spoke as if I knew, to you who know how a house looks clothed in flame from the inside, you sitting in the smoke, as if watching my prose only stoke the flames. In that stagnant room among stagnant rooms, where the powerful talk for your people, bound in the margins of empire's book, who speak and speak and speak and pretend to listen. May you find the wadi where water flows into future and greet what has come before, where you did not know you knew before, the unmapped hidden wadi where past and future meet. And one of the things, thanks, yeah, you could be quiet too, it's okay. One of the things that I've done that I'm sort of most happy about was I got involved with an organization called We Are Not Numbers, which tells stories, helps bring out stories written in English by young people from Gaza. And one of the lovely writers that I've worked with is an incredible young person named Shahad Al-Nami, and she's actually kind of made a nice little name for herself. So look her up. I can send it to you later on. By the way, you can email me for any information, or you want to yell at me about anything I've said tonight. You can, pmetres@jcu.edu. I'm happy to be in conversation. This is a poem that I helped her edit just a little bit, but she wrote this last year. It's called Until It Passes. So many of us still hold our phones, read your poems. This is for her former teacher, Rifat Al-Arir. So many of us still hold our phones, read your poems, not losing hope, but we're tired of sleeping in fear, tired of being displaced, living in tents, haunted by horrors that linger in the minds. A missile pierced the silence, burning all the tents, including you. I have not forgotten. Nights become nightmares. Children cry from the cold. Their laughter once bright, now a distant echo. We yearn to return, free from fear. When will these bloody nights end? When will this tragedy stop? When will our normal lives return and our distant dreams come true? We keep asking, will this pass? And remember how you used to say, it shall pass. I keep hoping it shall pass. Still, we wait for the day peace will dawn. and a new chapter open its bleary eyes. So, all right, now I'm going to go a little off script and read something different. This is, you want to hear like a really weird poem that I just wrote? All right, this is totally new. It's probably terrible. But I was given a prompt. I've been thinking a lot about AI and social media and the ways in which it's sort of perverting our sense of who we are, our subjectivity in the world. So the prompt was actually from Elizabeth Bradfield. I Am Not a Robot was the title. I had to write a poem from this title, I Am Not a Robot. So I am not a robot, but I play one on TV, on YouTube and Insta and FB. Produce the play of me, TLDR. I work to appear to myself, hunted avatar whose flailed flesh follows wherever I doggedly, hauntedly wander. I am not a robot. I've got eyes that turn inward at night, screen films posed and composed of the tossed litter of my days, the loosed gears and fears of that gaze back at me. I labor, I sweat, and ache to give birth to what's next. So I don't know, did it work? It's a weird one. It's a weird one. Not that weird? Okay. Maybe one more new one. Do you want to hear a Cleveland Psalm or a Belfast Blackbird? Blackbird it is. So I've had the great pleasure of leading trips to Northern Ireland where that society went through a 30-year period of violent conflict, almost like a civil war in a sense, a low-grade civil war. And in the last 25 years, they've had this really interesting peace process. It's sort of living laboratory for peace building. And so that's catnip to me, who's been studying and wanting to end war forever. What would it be like to be at a place that has chosen peace as a sort of dominant narrative? So that's what I've been doing there. But of course, I just notice all these other things about the society. One of which is the blackbirds, which sing all night. They're the most beautiful sounding bird. And I wonder, is it just because we don't have blackbirds around me that their song is so beautiful, or is it just beautiful? And I don't know the answer to that, but I encourage you all to go on YouTube and listen to the blackbird. They're such beautiful songs. So this is Belfast Blackbird. All hours, at all hours, day or night, but especially at night, you perch in the surround sound of our open skulls and call us calm or pester us up. Wingman, insomniac, and dream soundtrack. You don't call as much as thread your sweet needle through our thought, stitching our summer night back into day. A little bird poem. Okay, so I wanted to read something from this book. Derek Pollard is one of the series editor of the Poets on Poetry series. This book is a collection of essays and conversation, dispatches from Land of Erasure, really focusing on sort of Arab American writing and culture with an emphasis on sort of exploring the poetics of justice, but also the poetics of peace building. So I thought I would maybe just read a little bit from the very last essay, which kind of waxes a little poetic about what I hope that our writing does, my writing does, and hopefully anybody's writing. So what Charles Simic said about the predicament of the lyric poet can be said about the conscientious objector, the war resistor. Here is something we can all count on. Sooner or later, our tribe always comes to ask us to agree to murder. The lyric poet is almost by definition a traitor to his own people. He is the stranger who speaks the harsh truth that only individual lives are unique and therefore sacred. He may be loved by his people, but his example is also the one to be warned against. May our writing not be a language to paper over the cracks in the walls of war. May our pens widen the cracks until the walls fall, until the house that war built no longer stands. But every day someone comes and fills those cracks with liquid capital, builds more walls with our own sweat and blood, and finds a way to profit from other people's suffering. So maybe chronicle what went wrong, to lay bare the operations of a machine that is operated by people to destroy other people. And then, as importantly, prophesy another world inside this one. We can see that other world all around us, in the courage of refusals, in calling out the powerful, in erasing the erasures, in imagining ourselves in webs of relationships that include even our enemies, in compassion for self and other, in dreaming of the fields where we lie together without names or causes, in lying together without names or causes, in binding our words with others, in creating shared spaces, in building bridges and bridging narratives and acts large and small as Mahmoud Darwish making coffee in Beirut during another war. Somewhere, someone is making coffee right now. Somewhere, someone is dying, and someone is being born. Somewhere, someone is changing a diaper. Somewhere, someone is making love. Somewhere, someone is heading to the river to wash. It is us. The river is ahead, shining in the afternoon sun. As we approach, hot and tired, it opens itself like it's never been entered. We can see clear down to the riverbed. It's time to lay down our burdens and enter the water, and, if only for its eternity of now, to be cleansed. Okay, so that's how the book ends. All right, this is a 2-poem warning. And this is going to invite your cooperation. This is a poem called Raise Your Glass. So it's a series of toasts, and I would invite you to raise a fictional glass or an actual one if you have. And when I say a toast, I'd like you to raise that fictional glass and say a toast with me, and I will read some poems around it. So raise your glass. A toast. Toast. To the thirst that won't be quenched. A toast. Toast. To the drought that dries up in the rain. A toast. To the drunk who finally stops drinking and drinks loneliness again. A toast. To the fire that guts the past and clears way for future. A toast. To the country that misplaces its border guards. A toast. To the borderland between our lives and the dream of our lives. A toast. To the one who won the election for a country that no longer exists. A toast. To the president who dreams he's lost his arms and wakes with an itchy scalp. A toast. To the walls that grow doors overnight. A toast. To the migrants, the authors of movement who write with their feet. A toast. To beauty that has no reason but herself. A toast. To the youth who don't know history tells them it's not possible. A toast. To us in the middle of the thicket, and the only way forward is farther in. A toast to the aged who live their last years where they've always lived, in another country. A toast to the dream of the other country that is and is not in this one. A toast to social media and its endless feeds where the phone eats first. A toast to the internet that helps us forget what we never knew we needed to know. A toast to the freedom where no one is free, unless everyone is free. A toast to the last page of the internet which reads, "Go the fuck outside." A toast to the host and the guest, the ghost in this house, where we die together tonight and rise in some distant yesterday, our bodies hiding in the light of a forgotten open page. And one last little poem for you, a prayer. This is called Devotional, and this won the Lyric Poetry Prize, I think, some years ago, maybe 2016. So shout out to the Lyric Poetry Prize. This is a poem that's inspired by a Muslim prayer, but as you will hear, or you may know, this also sounds like the Psalms, and that's my warning to stop. That's not my heart. So I'm just wishing you all light. Whenever I come to New York, I feel very small. I think to be a New Yorker, you must be kind of humble by nature because the city makes you small. It sort of puts you in a certain size relative to itself. Out in the provinces where I live, I can feel kind of big and I can have all sorts of dreams in my head. But here, man, no dreams. They all get crushed right away. No dreams. So we got to keep our lights lit. We got to find that light in ourselves and each other. Devotional. Light my face and light the flesh of my flesh. Light each my eyes and light inside my sight. Light the light that makes me light in the bones, and in my hands light, and in my loins light. And light your light before and behind me, above and beneath me. Light to my right and light to left. Light to my enemies, who in the moral dark will use my light against me. Light the dull swords of my ribs, the thick fist within. Light the blood-hot rooms pulsing there. Light the gates when they swing wide to the stranger. Light, more light on my tongue. In the light, light, more light. In the black, light. And when it's time to snuff this wick, light that light. Thank you. Stop. You're going to make me not feel small. I like to feel small. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip. Thank you. We are thrilled to have Gregory Pardlo with us here this evening to share his work. Pardlo is the author of, most recently, Spectral Evidence, which was a finalist for the Kingsley Tufts Prize and the National Book Award. His 2019 memoir in essays, Air Traffic, addresses his relationships to his father, his younger selves, and manhood more broadly, which he also mulled in his Pulitzer Prize-winning second collection of poems, Digest, and reconsiders differently in Spectral Evidence. Pardlo is one of those poets whose unflinching gaze, both inward and outward, eviscerates self-deception and molding cultural pieties. His poems home furiously toward self-expression. Their movement is surgically precise, and their aim is a complete anatomy of the self, both as an experience and a social construct. Consider the poem Question and Answer, presented as a structuring parable, where a student asks whether writing about one's past self is problematic, an act of appropriation. This question, faintly absurd on its surface, inflects the poems that follow, which address addiction and abuse, the pitfalls of parenting, marriage, and racism and gun violence, and reach back in time to the Panther-era activist group MOVE, Jim Crow and American slavery, and even the times of Saint Teresa of Avila. Pardlo's language is surprising, forceful, and fearless, and delivers home truths about our dispiriting present. When he quotes a MOVE manifesto, you can't describe something profane without using profanity. You wonder if he is not slyly deploying an ars poetica. But his writing lands gracefully, often with subtle self-deprecation, and I'm quoting him, "Am I the only person who thinks self-mockery is punching up?" His honors include fellowships from the National Endowment of the Arts, for the Arts and the Guggenheim Foundation. He divides his time between New York and the United Arab Emirates, where he is head of literature and creative writing at NYU Abu Dhabi. I think he's here for 2 days, and we have him here with us this evening, so please welcome our second speaker, Gregory Pardlo.
Thank you so much. Wow, it's great to see everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Phil. That was fantastic, man. It's really a unique pleasure. This is the first time Philip and I have read together. A couple of old guys. I've been around for so long. And it's a pleasure to be here at the Poetry Society. Parker and I tried to coordinate this date several times, but as you can imagine, over the span of half a hemisphere of the world, it's difficult to coordinate the times. So this is a rare joy for me. I'm going to read from Spectral Evidence, and I'm going to read a couple of newer poems to end. I wanted to do something different with the book. Usually when I read, I start with, hey! I start with a background on spectral evidence, the idea of spectral evidence, and right, the kind of ideological framework. But tonight, I want to go thematically through one of the many, perhaps too many, themes in the book is my obsession with sight and the role of sight in both facilitating connection and being offensive. So at one point in time, this idea of reckless eyeballing was grounds for death for some African American men in particular. We hear this idea echoed in the drill instructor of a soldier story, I think, where maybe I'm getting the reference wrong, but the person of authority is saying, "Don't you eyeball me, boy," right? And so there's something deeply offensive and insubordinate about the agency of the eye, and so this is one of the things that I'm thinking through. Narratio. In 18th century France, Franz Mesmer made friends dance in sync like iron filings under the magnetized tips of his Mesmer fingers until further experiments proved to move the crowd he only need his Mesmer eyes. Digression. Like the ancient Scythians, I believe to see is to send spittle-like rays. That's an Augustine idea too, which may pop up somewhere. I believe is to send spittle-like rays that grapple an object's cosmic elements and resemble them in the sweatshop of the eye, a process not unlike tasting with the nose the hollandaise that surfs a heavy sigh, a measure of telepathy, a distance relation that buckets up from the soul a spitting image. The spirit in the queen's magic mirror was enslaved there, Siri tells me. According to Jesus, adultery with the eyes is adultery. Men see, says John Berger. As if I need only observe an English muffin to find its foretexture printed on my tongue to prove the tactility of the eye, the lemony emulsion amusing your bouche too, sudden jets of saliva at mention of the lemon butter's pinch. Don't think of French kisses. According to 17th century slave codes, imagining your enslaver's death was a crime punishable by death. I've stopped looking for fear my looking might hurt someone by accident, and I misplace my glasses at the hint of truths I don't want to see and pat the bench around me, my chest and hips as if I might vanish. Ancient Scythians blinded prisoners of war to mark them as slaves. A visible distinction. The eyes, the tongue. Mon semblable. Watch me unlock my phone with my face. So, Parker, thanks again for the introduction. St. Teresa Avila, I don't know how I fell into the rabbit hole of St. Teresa Avila, but she's just endlessly interesting human being. So it starts with, I'm going to read the ecstasy poem about the ecstasy of St. Teresa, which was the sculptor Bernini in Rome, I assume, is the sculpture. Well, St. Teresa wrote her memoirs at great length, and she described levitating, which was her superpower. And she also described an experience that the sculptor Bernini tries to capture in stone, which is her having this ecstatic experience. And I'm curious about this because the idea of a male artist imagining a female ecstasy sort of in this historical moment in our culture goes against everything that we call appropriate, right? But at the same time, this is what we want artists to do. And so I'm kind of just thinking through the contradictions in that. 37. Nunsploitation. But for that, and if you can look up the sculptures, this is an ekphrastic poem. But for that iron's point blushing, O Lord, like a cautery tool for the wounded soul, the marble and bronze idols, an engine of reverence and tourism, Bernini distills as ecstasy, this concupiscence, this tantric sneeze. Could Bernini have rendered a pleasure, Lord, not got at the end of a spear? The highest angel haunted Teresa Avila like a Motown hook and prodded her body quiverish with love's heartburner, a rapture fantasy fathomed by her innermost yoga. Her spirit burst forth, O Lord, like a jelly jar full of lightning bugs clumsied from my handlebars. Beneath the hoodie, her head lolls sweetly with the funk of that agony glorioso, which, if you don't know, now you do, because Bernini lifted Teresa's story, Lord, like a shipwreck from its ecclesiastical groove, and mimicked her signature miracle, levitation, which she murmured into her sackcloth and wimple. He left Teresa's left foot exposed as if to bait a bedside tidbit, the devil, for whom she had no fear, for he appeared to her toy-sized and black, and dropped by to make her pound air with laughter, all weightless, all risen by pinch and tickle, until she wet him with holy water. Lord, tell me that empathy, like art, is useless and necessary, that Bernini's inspiration is more than a contact high. Whatever he named it, Lord, this bone-still cinema, this Spartan delight. Forgive him. Forgive us all, Lord, we lesser creators who conflate our subjects' demons with our own. And I'm also thinking about sight in the way it constructs, the one word race gender. If we think about that as a one consistent concept. This is also titled Nunsploitation. Teresa Avila buzzes me in, then makes me leave my shoes in the foyer before I enter the Upper East Side tabernacle of shame she calls a therapist's office, where she divines the truths disguised by my confessions. As my bare feet cross the cold parquet, dark and cloven to a sticky rhythm, Teresa asks if I'm still tempting the goat paths that Teresa asks if I'm still tempting the goat paths that rim the ravine my passions trickle into. Oh, why is such a mouthful for me today? It's true. I'm in love with my therapist. Blame the saints' books that hearken from half a millennium away. I love her unattainable intimacy, her use of my inner ear to give goosebumps on the brain. The voice that is and is not Teresa's channels canticles and conjures woodcut illustrations of my beloved sprouting poems from her desk at Valladolid. Above her, a dove thought winging through numinous yonder break. Teresa and Teresa. And Teresa in concert fanning out in imitation of a Hindu god. You'd expect compassion from someone who gentled her mind inside 7 mansions of prayer while feeding flames her love letters to keep them from prying eyes. Instead, she saint-splains the dangers of transference, as if I never noticed my itch to project the idea of one thing onto the figure of another. as if professing love to my therapist meant only to mask mommy issues. And anyways, isn't that a bit sanctimonious, coming from someone saving her love for a father figure whose image reflects the sum of all creation? A love so consuming, her inside song reached the sistren's ears glued to her office door, song quoting an erotic elan, a harmony of relation probing the mystery of self-love, which is, of course, where love begins. Ipso facto, love is nothing but transference. Love is squeezing people's feet into fetishes we've schlepped hill and vale, since memory, like moonlight, was the surplus of a previous life. To have come this far, across the park, through ramble and glade, knowing the glass slipper would fit any old foot I put in it, let the bean counters of love call that transference. Let them name the affliction what they will, as if diagnosis were a cure. Let them tabulate salvation. Tell me how many hair shirts and unanswered hungers. Tell me how many shoeless steps to beatitude. So there was a case, one of the, again, many obsessions, perhaps too many obsessions of this book, is the criminal justice system. And there was a case in which a young woman, there was a black man was driving on a country road and looked at the young woman who was at quite a distance, and she felt so threatened by his, what she called a leer, that he was charged with rape. Wow. And again, the power of eyesight. It's complicated. He wasn't found guilty, but that it turned out to be irrelevant, and you'll see why. One of the things I'm thinking through in the book is how this was already, this kind of fait accompli. This was, what is the verb tense that captures something that we all know is inevitably going to happen, and yet must be narrated through the process of the courts at the same time. The judges, if this poem isn't confusing enough, the judge's citation, I'll read you really quickly. If by intentional threats or menace of some violence, such as looking at a person in a leering manner, that is, in some sort of sly or threatening or suggestive manner, watching one and then following one, he causes another to reasonably apprehend imminent danger, and by such conduct causes one to become frightened and run, or causes one to do otherwise than he would have done, then he is guilty of assault. That's North Carolina Superior Court judge in 1952. From the courts and 17-year-old Miss Willa Jean Boswell's perspectives, everything will have happened as she describes it, and as the prosecutor will have advised her to describe it for the Yanceyville jury when this third of 4 trials adjourns. She is telling it like she told her father and brothers. Matt Ingram's jalopy appeared on the plantation road she took to join them, Daddy and them, in the field. They was pickin' tobacco, she's saying, one of the many facts that will be true in each trial, as it was true that day in June of 51. True as her dungarees and plaid shirt, the broad hat under which her hair, the long-handled hoe shouldered like a rifle for the fields where she, that particular morning, was bound. Ingram hung his whole head out the window as he drove by, she is about to say, real slow-like, barely a dust-up. He never done like that before. She may be remembering how Ingram vanished when he drove around the bend, when she heard his engine go dead, and she ran for the safety of her kin. She didn't see him leave the car, she can't say, but there he was, in the field, so close, maybe, the prosecutor will have helped her reckon 70 feet or so, like, say, from the doors of the church to the pulpit. Ingram stopped at some plum bushes, watched her in silence, the judge prompts. She knows Mac everybody calls him, as a good Negro, a reputation that requires a talent for being present and absent at once. The only way a man like him could imagine a fate beyond sharecropping, by scrubbing traces of plot and motive from his life story to show he had no designs on the history that belongs to the men whose order the law maintains. That's why his leer, her testimony in the fourth trial will record it as a leer, was so menacing. She will have meant to say, shaken, weeping, still scared. As everyone knows, Ingram will be charged with assault with intent to rape. Less certain is that on appeal 2 years from now, he'll be sentenced to time served. His innocence will have been proven irrelevant. His family, wife, 9 children, bankrupted, dispossessed, dispersed. The mortgage on his farm foreclosed. At this point in Willa Jean's testimony, as Ingram listens, he knows he is still searching for Mr. Boswell, hoping to borrow a trailer, as he has often done, and that this time will be the last, because he knows he will leave his car and find some shade by the plum bushes where he can scan the field to see where Boswell and his boys might be working. He can even see himself, in Willa Jean's story, still wondering, though now he knows, who is that strange boy with the big hat and the hoe? And where is he off to in such a hurry? Uplifting poetry this evening. Okay. Yes. So I'm also interested in the intersection of science and faith. And I think this is what we mean when we say metaphysics. I'm going to read a couple of what I'm calling charms. They're spell poems, basically, actually inspired by ChatGPT prompts. But hopefully the idea is to use these prompts to do something sort of metaphysical. I'll read the first one, which is an apology for the use of charms. Afro-pessimism is not a euphemism for a bad hair day. No joke. It's rough out there. You try to stay upbeat when a beat cop cracks a skull and the court condemns the kid who filmed him. The reggae soundtrack to the first-person shooter's gallery of body cam footage asks, what you gonna do when they come for you? Like it was ordained, which some say it was. See, when Noah's son Ham stumbled upon the old man, buck-ass naked, passed out, drunk as a judge, rather than process the shame that his kid had witnessed, the Old Testament bad dad cursed all of Ham's descendants. And some say that's why we're in the fix we're in. For if you believe it, Ham begat black folks. His reckless, let's call it eyeballing, begat the curse of everlasting servitude. Back before colonial laws forbade black women from naming in court the white men who'd knocked them up, long before calipers sized a skull in the long con of racial science, pious slave merchants brandished Bibles and claimed Ham's curse gave them divine license to ply their trade. Don't try to make it make sense. Things are better now, some deduce from theories of human progress in which fish with feet rise to hunch as monkeys aspiring toward the angelic train and stand upright as God-fearing Europeans. Also them, stop living in the past. Meanwhile, Jim Crow's cheap cologne still haunts the halls of state capitol buildings. Must we pretend nobody knows why we sing the blues? Why we whistle through the blessing in our 2 front teeth? Why we might turn to the black girl magic of charms that traces back to the two-headed woman dancing between pillars of fire and cloud. Not the trinket on your bracelet or Crocs, but the spells, bits of mojo that drum up strength to live another day free from having slapped someone. Ask Miss Johnson down the street. She'll tell you, a smile big as a watermelon slice is the essence of enchantment. Be generous with it. Repeat, as DeRay tweets, I love my blackness and yours. And we'll all meet up at the family picnic because, in truth, we are every American ham's children learning to self-parent in a nation forefathered by deadbeats who would have us believe that all will be well as long as we pretend we don't see what we're seeing. I read that poem at UVA, University of Virginia, and somebody came up afterwards. It was fascinating. He was so disturbed by this line, I love my blackness and yours. And he went on this I don't know, this kind of philosophical, backflips and acrobatics to make it make a sense that did not include him in the concept of blackness. It was fascinating. I mean, this is what our country does to us. Okay. A couple things to know about this poem, HeLa cells. Henrietta Lacks, okay, her cells have been used for generations. DNA methylation is the process that causes genomes to change expression without mutating. This is the scientific basis for epigenetics. This poem is looking, who was it? Wilhelm Kuhn conducted experiments to prove that you could see an image imprinted on the eye of when a person dies. And this was actually used in court. It was a famous court case where the head of a young woman was exhumed in order to examine the eye to find the face of course, a random black guy in town. And so a lot of the poems are thinking about, this is called optography, this criminal justice process. Okay, charm for darkness. Directions. Use your 5-finger discount from a corner store to obtain a pack of Apple Now-Laters. Freeze dry them and combine with the pestle ground shell of a blister beetle. Apply the neon green concoction as eyeshadow and wear for 4 hours, dancing nonstop in the strobe light behind the DJ booth on Grown and Sexy Night. At least act as if you were enchanted by the advances Wilhelm Kuhn made in science when you imagine him explaining how he believed the merest blink of an eye could stop time, in the sense that the photographer Eddie Muybridge proved a horse can fly if you chop it up into millisecond freeze frames. With Kuhn, however, it was always rabbit season, because Kuhn made his lab a rabbit factory and fitted the little furballs with hostage hoods to charge their eyes with the enzyme rhodopsin so that the light he would later bathe them in might, like trauma, remain. One by one, he yanked the rabbits from their cages like Kleenex. One by one, Kuhn removed the hoods and face-baked 100 bunnies. Or so. Why would he count bunnies abundant as HeLa cells are today? Kuhn clamped their heads in his vise and pinned their lids open to imprint waffle grids of sunbeam coming from his window pane. We might say he gave them to the light, which is an idiom for giving birth. But to keep the first brightness fresh as snowfall on the eyeball, one by one, he lopped the bunnies' heads with a mortal shutter click. Then he peeled their corneas like old-school Polaroids. Wilhelm Kuhn, your lab results prove you are the father of optography by finding the light of yon window burnt like Jesus in the toast onto 1 in 1,000 eyeballs. Who was counting? Your science proved what's possible depends on what you're willing to sacrifice. This charm channels the soft power of all those rabbit's foot amulets squandered in Kuhn's hunt for death's peephole, aka the sublime. This charm will recharge as you meditate on the ritual nature of sacrifice, how it situates suffering as a renewable resource. Meditate on its multifarious forms, from enslaved women unnamed by history and forced by the speculum of J. Marion Sims, the father of gynecology, to give light to their suffering in the name of science, to other oblivions from which, with practice, you might also draw fire, e.g. Tuskegee, the plundered corpses of unrecorded Negro cemeteries, forced sterilizations. Yet, as pain is no one's birthright, this charm will lift you in mock rapture, crowd surf you, as in a Marian procession, across a sea of bodies, grooving, relentless masses stirring with the epigenetic dreams their ancestors stitched into their methylated genomes. So I'm obviously really interested in the language of science, right? And so this is part of the palette that I'm playing with. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't have any lighter poems for you. So I'm going to wrap up. This is I guess a 3-poem morning. Yeah. I'm going to wrap up with a couple of elegies. This past year, over the summer, I lost my baby brother, who was a committed alcoholic and an incredibly talented musician and artist. Do not resuscitate. As if I would, if I could, compress his chest to prevent the angel from wheezing out of the toxic shavasana my grown-ass baby brother left in the ICU for doctors to pronounce it unsalvageable. As if I'd assume he's just drunk or lazy, which Daddy used to say is worse than stupid. As if I might make a board game of his torso, snap blue latex at my wrists, and tweeze free each failed organ, careful not to touch the tender edges that trigger alarms from the steampunk arbor of appliances surrounding him. Why put him back in life's ring, as if the bare-fisted cage match against his reflection could end in decision this time, as if he hadn't been hell-bent on dying. A riot of prayer hands emojis, contraptions indifferent to the racket they make. It is time to begin pointing fingers, doctors, each other, myself, anyone to hold accountable until the orderlies restore me to my senses. And a good few years back, 2016, lost my dad in very similar circumstances. He went out to Vegas to basically to die in the desert, to kill himself slowly. I live in the desert now, as Philip pointed out. I live in Abu Dhabi. I'm terrified by the implications of that. Metaphor. To transfer or carry, as a man might carry his namesake on his arms or on his shoulders, cheering, "We bad, we bad," as my father did when he saw himself in me. As I came of age, however, I thought my father was, in the sense that means to hamper or impede, an embarrassment, which is, as all language essentially is, a metaphor. I.A. Richards says, a metaphor consists of a tenor and a vehicle. My father would point out that he's using a metaphor to define metaphors. A literalization, like the relic to the corpse. Like when Richards asks himself if a wooden leg is a metaphor for a wooden leg. My dad, Gregory Pardlo Sr., before he died, lost his leg to diabetes. Even though he himself would be the only person to see it, he insisted that the prosthesis precisely match his skin tone. You see, this is the same guy who gave me a Hot Wheels car for Christmas. A joke, see. He promised me a car when I turned 16. It shimmers on my desk now, a kitschy muse with shark's teeth decals behind the wheel wells. Before he died, I told him I would have preferred a Matchbox car packaged in an actual matchbox, literalizing the figurative commingling of tenor and vehicle, more metonym than metaphor, a pedigree, in other words. He told me to get the stick out of my ass. Greg Pardlo is dead. Long live Greg Pardlo. Convertible. My pop let me steer when I was small enough to snug between his belly and the wheel. Any random intersection, he might hoist me across the handbrake and onto his lap to pilot the wagon before returning me to earth. As I got older, he'd make me steer while he lit a smoke or shed his jacket. His ashes arrived in a cardboard carton with shipping labels and barcode, heavy enough to trigger the seatbelt alarm as we clipped home, honeysuckle in the air, from the post office. A reasonable person would have put the box on the floor, but you know already, don't you? I held him in my lap. You're mine, I told the box of dad dust, lifting my hands occasionally, reckless to the wind, tempting the evening, swinging our private chariot of steel and bone. Thank you.